has my beloved Labour Party caught the chronic timidity bug? Otherwise, why would they stick to the stage 3 tax cuts when everyone else, like the Tills, the Green, the El-Khoury, is for getting rid of it? Will Albo be remembered as our Casabianca at the battle of the $1 trillion debt? The boy stood on the burning deck when all but he had fled.
It's a wonderful question and such panache as well. What a performance. But the question is a serious one to you, Katy. How on earth can you justify a tax cut for the rich when we've heard people tonight say that they are going backward, they can't afford childcare? You've told us that you can't afford to bring forward the subsidy for childcare, but you can deliver a tax cut for the rich.
I thought you might come to me first on that one, Stan.
You are the Finance Minister.
I am. So I have a huge job ahead of me. In front of me right now, Jim and I are working through the budget that we inherited from...
Sorry, Katy, but you've committed to stage 3 tax cuts. They are going to be delivered.
Certainly, we had said before the election that we were not going to change the stage 3 tax cuts, and our position on that has not changed. We were clear at the point that they were debated in the Parliament. They are legislated. We lost the arguments in the Parliament, and our position on them hasn't changed. I would also say to you, though, that the tax cuts are due to come in July 2024. We are dealing with issues and cost of living pressures and the inflationary environment and wages and issues like that right now. And Jim and my attention is going on to what can we do right now to ease some of those
that,
pressures.
But if you can't afford to deal with the things...
Sorry, if I could just finish, Dan, and to work through, after 9 years of coalition government, exactly what the budget looks like going forward. I think it's entirely reasonable that a new government we've had 101 days, I think, to work through all of those issues, to take appropriate advice and be measured in how we respond to them. There is no doubt we have massive challenges facing us that we're not accommodated for in the budget, and we need to work through those. We've got a budget coming up in October where we're looking at making some savings and delivering on some of our election commitments, but our position on stage 3 has not changed.
No, and that means they're going to be delivered, which means that someone on $200,000 a year will be $9,000 better off. Who'd like to be $9,000 better off? Yeah. Who would rather see that money go towards things like childcare? How can you justify something that if someone's earning $200,000 a year is going to be $9,000 better off when we're seeing the struggle for people to keep their head above water and you can't deliver wage increases in line with inflation?
Is that back at me, Stan?
Yeah.
OK, sorry. Well, I mean, my answer is the same to you, that we took a position on those tax cuts. We lost that in the Parliament. They were legislated. We made a commitment to the Australian people before the election around not changing the stage 3 tax cuts, and our position on those have not changed. That's not to say that we aren't looking at ways to make sure that we are putting in place sensible responses to people's cost of living pressures, but that has to happen in the next 2 years. The tax cuts in stage 3 are not going to come in until 2024. So we have to look at things that we can do right now. So that comes into the things we've discussed tonight about skills, about investing in childcare, about lowering the price of medicines, in doing all of those things, supporting wage claims of aged care workers and the rest of them that we've already done to ease some of those pressures on families now.
I want to come to Stuart in just a moment, but this is another thing that we've seen around the world, and you've written a lot about this, Anthony, and that is growing inequality and a sense that people are not paying what they should. How is that playing out internationally and the impact that's having on the health of democracy?
Well, it's very bad. It's very bad indeed. Growing inequality is very toxic in any society. It's very unjust. I mean, it seems to me extraordinary, actually, with very great respect for the situation here, that something which is obviously wrong, I mean, it's obviously wrong to give tax cuts to people who've got a lot of money and who would probably spend the money that they get from the tax cut on perhaps buying foreign goods or something, when the tax cut should be for lower income people. People on lower income should be taken out of the tax bracket if they can, so that the money they spend goes back into the economy itself. And the lessening of the gap between people who have and people who don't have is a good thing in society, because it promotes greater social solidarity. Inequality and growing inequality causes a very great deal of resentment. And as I say, it's very toxic. I think that the rise in populism that we've seen in recent years is a direct function of the fact that inequality in our world as a whole has been growing so rapidly. It's now out of hand.
Stuart, Robert, when this was your idea, your previous government's idea to reduce taxes.
Absolutely.
For the
We'll
rich.
always be the
How
party
do you
of lower
justify
tax stand, and we won't apologise for being a party of smaller government and lower taxation.
For people earning $200,000 a year?
The intent of the tax cuts was designed to get from $45,000 to $200,000 in a single tax bracket, so that 95% of people will be paying no more than 30 cents in the dollar, which, by the way, brings it up to the level of corporations. Unless you're a small business, of course, it's at 25%. But we'll always be the party of aspiration and always the party of lower tax.
Ross Garnaut, the economist who has delivered a speech today, has said we're kidding ourselves. He has said that we have to increase the tax take. Wendy, do you think this is a time to increase taxes, or could you justify what we're going to see with the Stage 3 tax cuts?
For me, as a business owner, and for the business owners that I'm speaking on behalf of, we have a situation at the moment where I had a woman message me yesterday. She is a mother of two. Her youngest is 6 months old. She's put out a job ad for the past 6 months and had one applicant. She's taking the baby and putting the baby in the back of the store with one of her relatives or friends or whoever can sit with the child, so she can work at the front. And then the BAS statements come through and the tax comes through to these small business owners, and the front line, hospitality, retail, travel, tourism, the wedding industry and the event industry where I come from, have had 2 years of absolute hell. Their staff and their IP was basically moved on because they couldn't work. They were shut down. And so now we're in a position where we don't have staff. Our IP has left us 10, 15, 20 years, these employees that worked with us. On top of which, we have a situation where we're having conversations around tax, but we need to have a conversation around how we can keep these businesses open, because there are some businesses out there who are shutting their doors because it's cheaper to do that than to keep them open, and they're still having to pay taxes. And there's been no conversation around the aftermath of what the pandemic has meant for small business owners and how we can move forward. Rather than looking at it in a silo, we need to look at how the economy is actually functioning and how we can actually move forward as a country.
Katy Gallagher, that brings us to something that has also emerged out of the summit, and that is multi-employer bargaining, that immediately Australian Industry Group CEO Ines Willox has said could shut down parts of the economy, could have an impact on small business, could see more industrial disputation. How do you justify that in an environment that we're facing right now?
So the discussion around bargaining, and I think you've seen in the recent days, COSBOA and the BCA working with the ACTU acknowledge that there are areas that we need to improve in relation to bargaining, and particularly bargaining in certain industries where the bargaining system isn't working and wages haven't been growing. And I would use the care economy as a classic example here, where we've got highly feminised industries, low paid. It's an area where we're going to have to attract more workers, and unless we fix some of these problems with the bargaining system so that there can be genuine bargaining, even at an industry level, to ensure that there's good simplicity for employers, but also the opportunity for workers to actually bargain and get the pay rises they need, we're going to have really big problems. I mean, we've got an ageing population. we need people to care for that ageing population. At the moment, we've got a system that isn't working for that workforce, and we're paying the consequences for it because workers are leaving the sector to go and work in other sectors where they're able to get better pay and where bargaining works in those industries. So there's definitely a problem that needs to be fixed. I think we've made a little bit of progress at the summit. Over the last few days. We acknowledged that the summit wasn't going to have universal consensus, that every industry and business group wasn't necessarily going to even agree with each other, let alone with unions or NGOs. But I think, you know, the whole point of the summit was to bring people together, to start the conversation, where there's areas of consensus, to move on those, and where there's areas that there isn't consensus but there's an appetite for further discussion, that we move on those into another process. And that's, you know, the whole point of the summit. I think it's been incredibly successful today. I totally disagree with Stuart's comment that it's the, you know, whatever he said at the beginning of the show, the jibe he had at the beginning of the show. It's been a really productive day, and we've got day 2 tomorrow, but it's absolutely about dealing with some of the challenges that the panellists have been outlining tonight.
I said it was the most expensive press conference that the
Yeah, well, I
government's run.
disagree with you, Robert.
I know,
Like,
but...
we're dealing with the challenges you left us, frankly, so
Yeah,
I'm surprised that you're even having a crack.
Shouldn't you have at least been at the table? Why did Peter Dutton set it out?
Well, I'm still reeling from the pattern bargaining we're going back to. You can give it a different name. You can put lipstick on this feral pig, but this is still 1970s pattern bargaining. That's what it is.
You did nothing for
and
9 years,
that's what it will lead into.
That's why we're dealing with these problems right now. It's outrageous that you come on this show and pretend anything else.
It was a press conference today. It was designed to talk about pattern bargaining. It's the old-fashioned unionist coming back again, Katy. Call it what it is.
Yeah, well, you weren't there. You didn't see it. It was absolutely nothing like that. Absolutely nothing. I'm not going to take the rubbish from you. Not tonight.
Maybe tomorrow.
No, not tomorrow either.